very nice when we can listen to the class in the morning or something like that. So if it's possible, I would like the class to be recorded.
Yeah, so I will have to check. I will have to check with the department in Vanier about that, just because it wasn't set as recorded before, and make sure that I can.
Okay, because the other classes we record it all the time. There's no problem.
Okay, great. I will definitely look into that. I bet there's some other people who also would find it helpful. So I'm teaching one course I'm actually teaching a course at a university in Halifax, technically, and that one we're meeting synchronously, but I'm also putting the recordings up. So if we can do something like that for this, I think it would be great.
Perfect. And the other thing, on the video, the last video you posted, yeah, you say to read the 10 days in a madhouse.
Yeah.
But I didn't find it on Leah.
Oh no, did I forget to put it? Let me take a look. Very good question. Let's go into Omnibus. Yeah, please feel free to, like, if there's little things I missed, feel free to bring them up. I am only human, as you all are as well, and sometimes I forget to click a thing or send a thing. You're right. Okay, it's missing. So I'm gonna upload it now. We'll just do that. Why? Oh God. Why? 10 days. We'll just call that. Na, 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 na. 5. This one. Okay. Somebody else coming in? Good. That is very important because I will have to put it up. So you guys do have to read it. I'm gonna find you. Bly. There we go.
People is gonna kill me now.
Great. So otherwise, we are a couple weeks into the course. So there we go. Another one. Today, we're starting a new module. So we finished more or less looking at different kinds of medieval, Renaissance, and early modern views of madness. So we could construct a kind of worldview around the different notions that we came across there. So this module, which we're going to be talking about this week, next week, and the week after, is on psychoanalytic views of madness or mental disorder. So we're going to talk a little bit about all kinds of people. We're going to talk a little bit about Freud, who you all probably have ideas about. This is our main talking points for today. So we're going to focus on today understanding the psyche or the personality and the basic framework of psychoanalysis. So we're going to look at what is the unconscious, what does it do, what is repression, why should we care about it. We're going to look at the explanation that psychoanalysis gives for the arising of mental distress, and it will put those into two groups broadly. One is neuroses, and the other is psychoses. And then we'll talk about analysis as a method, or this idea of the talking cure. So that's what we're going to do today. So these are some characters. So you probably many of you know who the guy on the right is. Anyone want to throw it in the chat? You can just say it. We'll find out. Let's see, there we go. Freud, yes, the guy on the right is Sigmund Freud. So Sigmund Freud is maybe the most famous psychoanalyst. He worked in Vienna, Austria, as well as in Germany in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. On the far left, we have his teacher, Breuer. who is, this week you're going to have just 3 pages out of this book. So this is one of the first things they published. It's Studies on Hysteria. And in the middle here we have, so her real name was Bertha Pappenheim, but she was a very famous patient of Freud and Breuer, and they call her Anna O as the pseudonym. So it's important that what we're talking about today is largely associated with Freud, but not only associated with Freud. And a lot of this worldview and framework came as well from his training and from his patients. So a little bit of context, before he became a psychoanalyst, before he developed analysis, Freud was working as a neurologist. And he started thinking about the psyche or the personality because he was working with patients with aphasia. And aphasia is when you know a word, but you can't get it out, more or less. So he saw that there was this gap, or there was this problem, that these patients seemed to have a kind of knowledge, but they couldn't demonstrate it. So it was there that he started training more in psychiatry. He did some studies at the Salpêtrière, which, as I mentioned last week, was part of the main asylum in Paris. As well as working with Breuer, he later worked very closely with Carl Jung. And it's worth noticing that we'll talk about this more next week, but psychoanalysis developed in the midst of an epidemic or a rash or a contagion of hysteria in Germany and Austria. So the short version of hysteria at this moment is when an emotion is repressed and it shows up as a physical symptom. We'll get there a little bit today, but it's worth noting that it's like in this context that they developed this method, this therapeutic method. It's not just in response to any old mental distress or problems. Okay, somebody else is coming in. So we're gonna listen to a very short clip. This is the only audio recording that we have of Freud. This is from a BBC interview. It's very short. It's just him giving, I don't know, his summary of what he's.
We can't hear anything.
We can't hear Miss. You have to unmute yourself so we can hear.
I started as a neurologist trying to bring relief to my neurotic patients. I discovered some important new facts about the unconscious, the role of instinctual urges, and so on. Out of these findings grew a new science, psychoanalysis, a part of psychology, and a new method of treatment of the neurosis. I had to pay heavily for this bit of good luck. People did not believe in my facts and thought my theories unsavory. Resistance was strong and unrelenting. In the end, I succeeded, but the struggle is not yet over. Sigmund Freud tried to.
There we go. All right. Thanks for keying me in on the sound there. Oops. There we go. So that is the only recording we have of Freud giving this very short version. Oh, there's that R&B lady of his career. Yeah, some of you had some different expectations. We'll see how it shows up. So with that being said, we're going to start building on some of these concepts and ideas. So we're going to start by trying to figure out what the unconscious is, which in some ways has to do with what consciousness is. So if people want to throw in the chat, or you can raise your hand and speak up, what is something that you're conscious of right now? Could be all kinds of things.
Something that we are aware.
You're conscious that you're aware, so that you're like awake and you're paying attention, right? So that you're paying attention to the screen because you're invested in the class. Anybody else? What are you conscious of or not conscious of? So if you have the self view on, you might be conscious of your own face. If you have a pain in your leg, maybe you're really conscious of that. Maybe it's standing out at you. If, you know, I've got my like teaching ears on, so I'm conscious of if there's any other noises happening out in the hallway. So at any given time, there's lots of things we're conscious of, and some of them matter and some of them don't matter. So there's also a number of things that we're not conscious of. So this is also almost a hard question to say, but can anyone name something that they're not conscious of right now, or that we're not typically conscious of, that most of us in the class aren't? Let's see. So I'm not really conscious of the way the back of my hair feels on my head because it just feels normal. Or I'm not conscious of right now the like environment outside and how safe the roads are because I'm not driving, right? Because that's simply not my task at hand. But I'm also not conscious of, unless I try really hard and remind myself, a lot of my formative childhood experiences, different kinds of traumas or problems, right? These are often things that we're not thinking about all the time. And so sometimes by choice or not by choice, we choose to ignore things. So not everything in your that is unconscious or that you're not conscious of is going to be important, right? Some of them are going to be like how my hair feels on the back of my head, which now I'm conscious because I've brought it up. But it's not something that's going to come up and cause me mental distress or something that I need to have treated by analysis, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it depends, but I think there's all kinds of different substances and intoxications that can lead us to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, so one of the things you're pointing out, right, is that with many different kinds of drugs or substances, it modifies what we're conscious of and what we're not conscious of, right? So that things that would normally be front of our mind, often we can kind of forget or lose, or they drift off. Other things like the circulation of your blood, right? We're not normally like, let me feel my blood. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, I feel it. We don't normally feel it, right? So there's a reason why it's also like kind of unnerving when you do.
Yeah, I think I work as a massage therapist, and there are a lot of clients that they are not conscious about their posture, about their pain. Okay, so I didn't know it because they take that as a normal already.
Yeah.
So when you take something as a normal, it goes to your unconsciously. So
it becomes kind of a habit, right? You're not thinking like, oh my God, my shoulder's hurting all the time. If your shoulder's hurting all the time, you're thinking, oh, my shoulder doesn't hurt today, when it's good.
Yeah, your brain recognizes it as a normal.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Awesome examples. Oh, we're gonna do this. Oh, are we gonna do this thing? Yeah. Let me see if I remember how to do this now. I'm gonna do a new share. It's gonna be here, but it's not gonna be there. It's gonna be in a different one. I'm gonna try something. I just moved all this to a new computer. Where is it? Readings? Is it in readings? Uh-oh. It's in here. It's where I'm like, oh, where did I put it? No. Shoot. Okay, is that right? Like I had a little, no, not that one. I had an iceberg that I wanted us. Let me see if I can. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna skip that for now because I forgot to move the other thing to the new computer. But I'll upload it as part of your asynchronous assignments. So Freud came up with a sort of map or a structure of the psyche, or a part of the personality. Yeah, exactly. I wanted to bring the iceberg of consciousness. We're gonna get there. So he basically saw our psyche or personality as having three main different parts. These are called the id, the ego, and the superego. And so it's not as if these map exactly onto portions of the brain, but these are parts of functions of how we make our way through everyday life. So he thinks that the id is something that's completely unconscious. It's a kind of force that's present from birth. It contains our instincts, our urges, our desires, like hunger, other kinds of appetites, strong reactions. These are all things that come from the id. And the id is also associated with a kind of infant state. So babies, if you can think, they just cry and you can't reason with them. You can't convince them that they should eat later, or you can't even find out if what they want is eating, or if what they want is for their diaper to have changed. It's this very kind of immediate needs-based force. And we can think about this. So I put this little cartoon. I'm sure you all have seen cartoons where there's like a tiny angel on one shoulder and a tiny devil on another shoulder. So usually the tiny devil is the one who takes the kind of role of the id, the role of the one who wants, the role of the one who desires. And the other creature on the shoulder, the angel on the shoulder, is what Freud termed the superego. The superego is not something that we're born with. It's something that is learned through internalizing what all the adults in our life say. So we learn the rules about our household. We learn the rules and norms about society. We learn when we're good or when we're bad, when we ought to feel guilty or when we ought to feel proud. These are all information that come out of the superego. So the superego is like the angel. And the ego in this picture is like this fellow at his computer. So the ego is a mediating force. It's mostly conscious. It's based in reason, deliberation, and decision-making. So at various points in our life, there's no picture. Anybody else see no picture? Shoot. Okay. At various points in our life, many points in our life, we have conflicts, we have tension between one part of us who wants what we want right now, give it to me, and between another part of us, right, the superego, who says like, or that's not quite fair, or maybe that's a desire that you shouldn't have, or, oh, I feel bad that I want that, or these kinds of different associations and ways of speaking to oneself. Exactly. Okay. Yeah, so you can imagine the scene from The Emperor's New Groove, if you all know that movie, where Kronk has little figures of himself, right, trying to convince him about what he should do. So we all have these, and they'll come up in very everyday situations. Like, gosh, I don't know, like, let me see. I'm walking down the street today. This is a lie, I didn't go outside, but say I was walking down the street and I passed by my favorite bakery. And I know that I don't really need to go to the bakery. In fact, I know that I have plenty of food at home, but let's say this bakery makes like my very favorite chocolate cake. At this particular point in time, my superego might be saying like, hey, there's a pandemic on. You don't need to go and get more things than you actually need. And then my id's going, no, I want the chocolate cake. I want the chocolate cake. So I have to kind of deliberate between them, right? Weigh things and decide what I would do. So we could say, I mean, there's lots of things that I could do in that situation, but if it was something really important to me, if it caused a lot of tension, it could become distressing. So if it wasn't just a chocolate cake, but if it was a job opportunity I really want and something that stands in the way, this might also cause a conflict. This is the iceberg. Somebody mentioned it earlier. So one way to, my mouth, good. One way to think about these three parts of the personality or psyche is to map them onto conscious, pre-conscious, and unconscious. So for something to be pre-conscious, it means that it's not currently conscious, but it could be. So if I ask you to remember what you did on Valentine's Day, now you're going to remember because I just said it. And it's probably pretty easy for you to remember because it's quite recent. But it wasn't at the forefront of your mind before this in the class. So it moved from pre-conscious to conscious. So the superego is mostly pre-conscious. The ego kind of bridges conscious and unconscious. And the id, right, that like instinctual kind of animalistic need and want is the unconscious force. Maybe this makes some sense to people. It's in the chat. Conscienception, yeah, conscienception. So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms for just a minute, and it's going to work roughly. Let me copy this for you. It's going to work roughly in a similar way as we've used breakout rooms before. Paste it here too. We'll go in the chat. So this time I'm actually going to, instead of, I don't know, the different things that we had to add before, we're going to have 2 scenarios for you to read. So I'm going to split you up into 7 groups again. And your job is to read these 2 scenarios. There's one about a character named Mary, one about a character named Tom. So read those over together. You might want to read them out loud. And then discuss what each of these situations or how the id, ego, and superego show up. So in both cases, these characters are in conflict. They have some tension. They're deciding about something. And so it's your job to figure out which part of pulling them is the id, which part of pulling them is the superego. Good. Okay, there's a whole bunch of you floating in there.
Can you just explain the int?
Oh, I can't hear you very well. Let me see. Sorry, can you try again?
Can you just explain again the int?
Damn it, I really can't hear you well. Could you put it in the chat? The id, ID, yeah. So it's a very funny word. It's an old-fashioned word. And that's the one that's referring to like the impulse part. No problem, no problem. Like we don't use these terms today. So one of the reasons why it's helpful to revisit it is because we don't, right? And many of you may not have heard these. So I'm going to put you in the breakout rooms. There's 7 groups, so I'm going to put you in just randomly. I'm gonna bring you back. It's like, I know I can message you while you're in the breakout rooms. I wish you could also message me, but I'm gonna aim to bring you back in about 10 minutes. If you're having trouble, then we'll make it 15, but that's the goal. And just like, do your best. So the breakout rooms are supposed to be helpful for you. They're supposed to be helpful for everyone. I'm not grading you on your answers on this breakout room, but it is a chance to apply the ideas. So, okay, I'm going to open you all there. Let me make sure.
Hi. Guys, I probably won't be answering because I'm driving, but as soon as I'm here, I'll answer.
Yeah, no, sorry. I just got here. I was not even in class. I was doing something, and I just so explain to me what we're supposed to do. Is it yeah? Okay, but is it the document on Leah? The docs, the Google Docs. Let me just check. So it's activity one madness psychologist psychoanalysis. So we're supposed to read all of this. Okay, got this.
Hello. After reading the two scenarios, what should we do? Ah, okay. So it means you're going to point it out under the slide. Okay. Yeah, that's true. But the first scenario, I think.
Oh yeah. I'm done reading. Okay. Oh, what? I don't know. Isn't it you?
It's Roxanne. Yeah.
Okay, so you say we have to talk about it, like we'll put this. Well, the first one, so and we have to write it, right? Okay, but we're group 6, right? Who's typing already? Someone's typing on the slide. Not even. I'm sorry. Check the room one. Okay, yeah. Can you add my
Ethan, can you just type that? Help me, please. You're going to type it. How you're doing?
She's asking if you're going to type it. Okay, so for the first one, me honestly, it's not really a problem with ego. It's just a conflict of interest. Like, you know, she has priority, but yeah, and I think she figured that she could go to the concert on Sunday if she still studied, you know, like she actually studied. So she wanted to study for 2 days, but you know, like she used a smart. But the teacher said we had to describe like the thing about a thing about ego or something. Let me just check that. Okay, read it to me.
I can say that Mary was just like, she wanted to accomplish what she feel best before putting her boyfriend in the second place. I think it's the type of ego she showed.
What's the ID? No, like she wrote ID, like the letter ID. Okay. For the second scenario, I think the guy has a big problem with super ego because just because his friend asked him for like a service doesn't mean that he has to like stop being friends with them, you know? And just like this jam and stuff like that. Like it's not mean that this friend asked him for gave him a suggestion, you know? Yeah. Hey.
Which typing? Ah, okay. I just want to ask, do you get noise at the back? Do you get noise at the back? Because my microphone is open. I don't know if you get like noise. I can just turn off my microphone.
But it's not that I'm on my phone, so for Mary case, she doesn't really have like a super ego or ego. She's actually trying to find like there's only a conflict of interest, and she found a solutions that could like benefit the both of them. he wrote, Mary's girlfriend got them tickets for a Shakespeare performance, and that creates a conflict of interest because Mary would love to go to the concert, but just okay. She's already breaking the rooms. She's already breaking the rooms. We only have 30 seconds left. I tried to do it, but I'm on my phone. So let me just try. Whoa, okay.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. So hopefully you were able to come up with a couple of things. Sorry if anybody's kicked from going in or out of the breakout room. It seems to be a common problem.
We did. We don't know if it's okay, but we did.
Yeah, that's all that matters. Just do it. So let's go over them just for a couple seconds. So the first case, Mary, who's got this exam in calculus, but also tickets for the Shakespeare Festival. And then she makes this decision that she's going to go one day with him. So what's going on in this case? Which part of the story is applying to Mary's id, or is her id showing up? Which part is her ego? Which part is her superego? Anybody have thoughts? If not, I can just look at the slides and see what you wrote. So the id is going to be associated with Mary's love for Shakespeare, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the id is like, oh my God, I love going to that theater. I really want to see it. And I love spending time with Paul, I guess.
Okay.
And then the superego is the part that is guilting her and helping her feel anxious. Because the superego is what we learned, you know, like, you should study, you should do well at school, it's your responsibility. And if you don't do it, you'll feel poorly, right? And then what she decides on, her compromise, is a function of the ego. So we can think of her ego saying, okay, on the one hand, yes, I like really, really want to see this Shakespeare play. On the other hand, yeah, like I do need to do well in calculus. And she comes to this decision. So I think most of you got picked out those 3 factors. And then Tom's, which is kind of an unfinished scenario. Anybody want to throw that out there, or should I just do it again? So Tom's just gotten his driver's license, right? And his parents say that he can only drive to and from school. But his friends want this ride to the arcade. So he feels nervous. He starts thinking about his mean friend's suggestion. So where are the different parts of the personality showing up? Whoops, something in the chat. Chat, where are you? Oh my God. I keep clicking on chat and it's not showing. Let me stop the share for a second because then I'll figure out where the chat went. The id wants to break, perfect. The id wants to break his parents' rules, right? The id is like, oh my God, I want to help my friends. I have this car in my ability. I would like to do things. 2 miles isn't too far. And how is the superego showing up here?
When he feels nervous, and he's rethinking.
Yeah, so the superego has to do with the rules that his parents set up, as well as sort of the value judgment that he makes upon his friends, right? So he thinks, oh, actually my friends are mean. They're not good friends. This is part of what the superego is saying, like, if they were really good friends, they wouldn't ask you to break the rules. And so in this case, the ego is still in a conflict, right? Still trying to figure out what he should do. This is where his nervousness or his anxiety comes from. So those are just a couple of examples. These are all kind of everyday things, right? We have things we want. Oh, whoops, I'm in the wrong slideshow still. We have things we want, and sometimes we can have them and we can't. And we have rules and norms and values that we have developed. Okay, let me have some water. Oh my God. We're almost there. So one factor that's going to be really important for Freud for how we understand the parts of the psyche, commonly called defense mechanisms. You don't need to, there's a whole list, there's actually like 10 or 12 of them. You don't need to know them all. But basically when the ego gets anxious, when the ego has a problem, a conflict between these 2 parts and can't resolve it, there's a bunch of ways in order to avoid that problem. One that's not here, but which counts, would be denial, right? So say that, I don't know, I have the urge to do something sexually which is not approved of by society. I might just deny it, right? I might say, no, that's definitely not something I want. I'm just going to pretend I don't want that and avoid it, right? Denial is conscious. So denial is when we're making a choice about it. But importantly, there's this process called repression.
But the denial, like when somebody's grieving, is sometimes a denial process in there, and it's not conscious.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I would say, like in the example I gave, denial would be conscious, but often it's not conscious. It's a very good point. So repression is an unconscious withholding of disturbing or threatening thoughts. And repression is normally what we talk about when we're referring to things like memories from childhood that you might have forgotten, or really abusive experiences that you may want to black out or not remember, right? Even if you're not choosing it, often, somehow, right, our unconscious goes, oh no, this is not good. This is not something you should be thinking about right now. And so you can think about it being like, think about the press in the word, right? It's like being pressed down to the bottom of the iceberg. Let's see. So there's also projection. So projection is when, say, I hate the person who lives next door to me, then I suddenly, but I don't accept it, right? Or it's still in my unconscious. I might suddenly start thinking that that person hates me. I would transfer that emotion, transfer that tension to the other person. So this helps me to avoid feeling guilty because, well, if they hate me, then it's them who's the problem. And one third example, which is regression. Regression is pretty easy. If you ever go and like swaddle yourself up in a blanket and rock a little bit, Freud would say you're regressing. And this is a movement back to kind of childhood comforts that soothed the id when you were a baby. So yeah, I think about this a lot because a lot of the things that are soothing to babies and their bodies also are soothing to ours, right? So they calm down. Oh no, am I still talking like a robot?
A little bit sometimes.
It's good for now? Okay. Okay, really weird. Ugh, I hate it. The Zoom is weird today. Yeah, so a lot of the things that comforted our bodies when we were children still comfort us now. So that's the basic idea behind regression. And a lot of the framework of psychoanalysis sees like symptoms or pathologies or distress coming out when there's a defense mechanism that's not operating fully, or when what is being held down or what is being avoided is too strong. So that's part of the cause of things like hysteria on this account and other kinds of mental disturbance. Okay, you probably have heard of the Freudian slip. You may not have, but the Freudian slip is what we refer to the slips of the tongue, the verbal mistakes that we make that actually reveal something about our unconscious. So they usually come out unintentionally, often because Freud did focus quite a bit on psychosexual development. There will have a Freudian slip, maybe one that you mean to say best and you say breast or something like that. But it could also be totally non-sexual, but revealing your thoughts. So one very famous story that Freud often told, kind of a proto-Freudian slip, has to do with, well, there's a story, and the story is there's a mother and two young girls, and they're going to have a bishop over to their house for tea. So he's going to come, drink some tea, have some cookies. This bishop has like a really, really, really large nose. So the mother pulls her girls aside and she says like, listen, do not say anything about his nose. He's a really lovely man. You know, we want him to feel good. So don't say anything about his nose. So the girls are going like, okay. So I'm not going to think about his nose. I'm not going to think about his nose. And they're having their tea and they're having a lovely conversation. And one of the girls leans over and says, hello, Bishop, would you like some more sugar in your nose? Right? So she meant to say sugar in your tea, but it's really that nose, that big nose that she could not ignore, that was on her mind. And so that becomes obvious. So you probably have made some of these slips yourself. You may, one time I was teaching and an author's name was very similar to a person I was dating at the time. And so I said my date's name in the middle of a lecture, right? These little things slip in and they often reveal to us like where our mind actually is. So you have a short video with your asynchronous activities where you're going to look at some political Freudian slips in famous speeches. Yeah, okay. Phew. Yeah. And just a little bit on the two kinds of pathology or disorder or distress in psychoanalysis. So the two kinds are neurosis or psychosis. And briefly, he thinks the neurosis is when the id is suppressed. So all our urges and instincts are pressed down in order to be more realistic. Whereas psychosis for psychoanalysis is when the id kind of takes over, when the id is stronger than the ego and the superego. So mainly what Freud and other psychoanalysts worked on and treated was neuroses, but they did sometimes treat psychoses. And neuroses is, nowadays we would use it to refer to things like OCD, depression, phobias and anxiety, hysteria. So this is when the impulse or instinct can't come out, can't show itself, can't be expressed. This is where it comes out in another way. So it might come out as a leg pain. It might come out as coughing that you can't stop. These kinds of cases are really exemplary of what Freud and Breuer were looking at in hysteria. And the other kind, as I just said, is psychosis. And psychoses generally refer to things like paranoia, delusions, schizophrenia, different kinds of hallucinations. So it
You're lagging.
has an explanation on this framework. The two kind. Sorry, often. You go. Am I really beeping? This is terrible. I can stop my video and see if that is better. See if the sound is better now. I hope so. Okay. Good. It's a lot better. Excellent. So psychoanalysis does have an explanation for these broadly two kinds of distress. And many psychoanalysts actually see it on a spectrum, so that you would have neuroses on one end, psychoses on the other end, but you could have a pathology or problem or mental distress anywhere along the middle. You can have mixed kind of states as well. The connection is not good. I will be a floating head. Let's see, chat. Yeah. So with this kind of framework, with this understanding of the parts of the psyche and the personality, it's from there, right, with this understanding of the unconscious, that the cure, what we call the talking cure, or psychoanalysis itself, is developed. And so it's always focused on talking. At the beginning, Breuer also often would hypnotize his patients, whereas Freud moved it more to discussion of dreams, as well as free association. And free association is like, when I say mother, you say, and then we see what you said, and we see how it's important or not important, right? Or when I say sex, you say, you think, well, what was the first word that came to my mind? Why does that matter? Yeah, so there's, that's the kind of way that he would speak with his patients. And the name Talking Cure actually came from the patient whose photo I had on the early slide, Anna O. She says, it seems to me like the talking, right? The loosening of certain things in my unconscious through my mouth and speaking is helping with my symptoms, is helping my physical symptoms to disappear. And the talking is usually done about not only what's happening in your day-to-day life now. So that's, contemporary psychotherapy, lots of which is talk-based, may say, okay, well, like, how was your week? And in contrast, psychoanalysis, though it may touch on the present, it will do so in reference to the past. So if you had a particular conflict at work this week, your psychoanalyst might ask you what kinds of childhood experiences, like, I don't know, say a coworker yells at you. Your psychoanalyst might say, well, like, did anyone yell at you when you were a child? What is your association with yelling? So if you were a child who was yelled at a lot, maybe it makes you feel really scared, and maybe you felt more scared than you needed to at work for that reason. So we have just a quote from some other researchers below, that the talking cure is when talking takes out this emotion that's stuck. And so this is what cures the patient, right? That actually it's through the speech. So it's very, 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 very different from the medieval and Renaissance views of madness that we looked at, right? So those were frequently body-based with treatments or behavior-based. And when we saw talking come in, it was usually to gather information. It wasn't part of a cure or treatment itself. So we're not going to talk that much about dreams in this class. We'll fit it in a bit next week. But as I've said, one of the main analysis strands for Freud was through looking at your dreams. So this kind of thing is highly symbolic. There'd often be something like, if you see someone holding balloons in the dream, those balloons may refer to your mother's breasts, or your lover's breasts, or something else. So I'm going to show you a short clip from, this is a movie from 2011. I don't know if anyone's seen it. It's called A Dangerous Method. And it's mostly about the relationship between Freud and Lacan. Yeah, holding balloons is great. So in this scene, we see Sigmund Freud and not Lacan, did I just say Lacan? Ooh. Freud and Jung, not Freud and Lacan. Lacan is too hard. We're not studying him in this class. So in this scene, Jung is telling Freud about a dream that he had, and Freud is performing a kind of live analysis. So we will take a look at this and see how he analyzes this dream and what y'all think about it.
I dreamed about a horse being hoisted by cables to a considerable height. Suddenly a cable breaks and the horse is dashed to the ground. But it's not hurt. It leaps up and gallops away, impeded only by a heavy log which it's obliged to drag along the ground. Then a rider on a small horse appears in front of it so that it's forced to slow down, and a carriage appears in front of the small horse so that our horse is compelled to slow down even more.
I imagine the horse is yourself.
Yes.
Your ambition has been frustrated in some way.
The rider slowing me down.
Yes.
I think this may refer to my wife's first pregnancy. I had to give up an opportunity to go to America because of it.
Ah.
The carriage in front perhaps alludes to an apprehension that our two daughters and other children, perhaps still to come, will impede my progress even more.
As a father of 6, I can vouch for that. Not to mention the inevitable financial difficulties.
No. Fortunately, my wife is extremely wealthy.
Ah. Yes. That is fortunate. This log,
Yes.
I think perhaps you should entertain the possibility that it represents the penis.
Yes. In which case, what may be at issue is that a certain sexual constraint has been brought about by a fear of a succession of endless pregnancies.
I'm bound to say that if one of my patients had brought me this dream, I might have said that the number of restraining elements surrounding this unfortunate horse could perhaps point to the determined suppression of some unruly sexual desire.
Yeah, so you recognize some of the actors there. What did we see? What? Stop everything from being full screen. Go away. There we go. What did you notice there? How were the two interpretations they came to different? Did anything stand out? So Freud noted that there was a lot of constraining elements, right? There's a lot of restraining elements. There's a lot of a dream about a horse and a carriage and different kinds of blockages. This shows a lot of tension in Jung's mind. Now they disagree. Jung famously went on to do a lot of dream analysis as well. They disagree about what exactly it might mean, but they do agree that it has something to do with his wife's pregnancy, has something to do with blockages in his life. So one of the things that we saw in this clip, but was not like focused on, is also the famous psychoanalyst couch. So hopefully you can see both of these comics. If you can't see them, I'll put them in for later. Yes, good. So you see in both of them this like long reclining couch. And this is what came to be the typical posture for psychoanalysis. So some people do analysis sitting up, but for many, many people, the method of analysis looks roughly like this. One person lying down and reclining and not making eye contact with their analyst while the analyst sits in a chair. And so this is a part of the methodology of it, which has to do with also allowing separation and allowing for things to come up on the patient's own. So you'll sometimes see parodies of analysis where you have a psychiatrist sitting there and he just says after everything, and how does that make you feel? Right? And then you say, well, it was nice and it was really hot out today. So I got drenched. I was all gross and sweaty by the time I got to work. The psychiatrist might say, how does that make you feel? And you say, well, it doesn't make me feel good. I feel kind of bad about showing up to work sweaty because it's my place of work. And you say, well, how does that make you feel? So you get this kind of looped or repetitive structure. And this is not to say that the parodies are true to life, but it is to say that this kind of open way of questioning, this exploratory thing, it's related to this free association. So how does that make you feel is an open-ended question that allows the patient to go in a lot of different directions. And God, there are, if you search for like psychoanalysis couch cartoons, you will find 4 million of them. They love to print these in newspapers. So think about this next time you're on the couch. And this, so this is an image from contemporary psychoanalyst kind of discourse and method, which just sums up some of the things that they focus on. So the first one is that it's all about the interpretation of what the client is putting forward, as well as helping them to unearth things. Someone knows Dilbert, good. So a second big factor, you won't have to memorize this part for now, is the question of transference. And so transference normally shows up in like, say I have a particular attachment to my mother, particular love for my mother. I start seeing a therapist who in one way or another reminds me of my mother. So I start treating them like my mother, right? I start associating all the emotions that I had with my mother with this particular therapist. So this is something that the psychoanalyst has to deal with, and one of the reasons why they try to put in that distance. This technical neutrality, they say, is what I've sort of shown in this open form of questioning. So the psychoanalyst, or as we saw in that clip, Freud, right? He didn't sit there and say to Jung, here is exactly what it means. He said, well, what do you think about this? Without pushing it. And of course, they're actually, because we are human beings who are analysts as well as patients, that the issue of countertransference can come up. So you don't need to really know transference or countertransference in detail. This is so you can get an idea of what goes into the method, what is essential to the method. Because as I've said, a lot of therapies nowadays are talk therapies, but a lot of them operate very differently. So they'll work more based on behavior, or they will work based more on correcting thoughts. If you've ever done a CBT course, you know that it's very, very different from psychoanalysis. Oh yeah. So that is it for the lecture part of today. I want to say a couple things about your reading responses, and then we'll go over the other asynchronous things for this week. Okay. Woo, and then we can all get off Zoom. Gosh. Okay, so with your responses, so I'm going to be putting comments on them and re-uploading them on Leia. I will do it as fast as I can. I am one human with a nerve injury in my hand and some other classes, but I will let you know. I'll send a mass Mayo when the first response has been marked. And I decided to go easy on you on this first one. So any submissions that were turned in by midnight, there will be no penalty on. Did I put that there? Yes. Okay, and then the other thing I went easy on people with, which I will not for the next one, is reading the instructions and following the instructions. So a few people wrote on texts which we had read in the class, but were not in the assignment instructions. And there's actually very specific reasons why I choose which texts I choose for you to write upon. So I don't choose the easiest ones. I choose ones that are going to be an interpretive challenge. So on the next one, if you do write a response, no, nothing due today. It will be due next week. For the next one, which I'm assigning today, if you do it on a reading which was not in the assignment, you'll get 0. And if you hand in the paper after the due date, you'll get a late penalty unless you have an accommodation. The biggest thing is just like read the instructions, read them carefully, read over your paper before you submit it, spell check it, read it carefully. So the second response that's being assigned today, and you will have to hand it in at the beginning of next class. The assignment instructions have already been uploaded. They're exactly the same as...
Didn't upload.
Sorry?
It appears like assignment, look at the instruction, but there is no instructions in there.
But isn't there an attached file?
No.
Oh, shoot, okay. Well, let me go back and do that now anyways. Assignments. Let's see. Where's the one with 2 assignments? Response paper 2. Oh, you're right. There we go. Good. So that's where it is. Up, up, up. There we go. I'll show you on the screen as well, just so we can go over it again. So yeah, the only thing that has changed is the due dates, and then which 3 texts you can choose. So apologies for not having the Bly app before today, but you can choose the Bly or the short Foucault piece from last week. Or the piece on unconscious ideas from today. Does the skull from last week count? Yes, the quiz on skull, which was in the asynchronous activities, is graded as part of your in-class activities.
Miss?
Yeah.
Hello? I have a first question.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you grade the other assignment that we did?
I haven't graded it yet.
Okay, perfect. Another thing is, do you know when the next test will be or something?
So we're just going to have short assignments and alternating with the in-class assignments. Basically, I'm assigning you the second response today, and then you will have to, next week in class, we'll have an activity that's graded as part of the in-class assignment when you hand that in, and that will continue roughly until the end of the semester when you'll have a bigger essay.
Okay, so the response is about the skull thing that we read?
No, so this, the skull thing was in reference to a quiz for last week's in-class activities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll probably have another quiz of some kind next week. I like the quizzes because they're easy to grade.
So what's the response on?
So it's on one of these 3 readings, one which is Breuer, one which is on Foucault from last week on about the asylums, and the 10 days in a mad hub. Okay, so you're gonna have to hand that one in next week. Yeah, I will go a bit easier on you for grading for the first response as well, but not too much in the future. And I'm probably going to give, well, I'm a finite human being, so I'm going to give you more feedback on the first one, and then a bit less on the next one, a bit less on the next one as we go along. But we are going to have a writing practice along the way for the final essay. Okay. These are. Is there a word
count for? Is there a word?
Yeah. So the assignment should be. I put you 50 to 400. You can easily go up to 500, and I won't penalize you. Okay. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. So the first assignment, one of the options to write on was Marjorie Kemp. Yes. Okay. I see in the chat, so there's at least one person. There's one person who contacted me from Friday as well, who didn't realize that some of the quiz questions have multiple answers. So given that, I will probably, I will give partial marks for those who gave, who got some of the answers right on a question, but not all of them. Yeah, I will give partial marks for this week, and for the future, make sure that you just read the quiz really carefully. Just slow down and see.
With so many answers, option B, so many answers. That way we don't miss it Because then it's true, if we put 3, but then we're 4. The answer is 0. So it's like a no fair.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to take a look at it. Microsoft Forms is not the easiest. So yeah, I will give you the part marks for that for this time.
Or at least you say, what are the 3 things? And then we can check on the 3 things.
I will think about that. I think it should be fair. I think I should be able to say, what are the things, select all, and then you can decide if there's 3 or 4. So that's probably how I will do things. Okay.
Thank you.
Good. So, so you have a couple of short things to read this week. Freud and the Unconscious Mind, Why Freud Still Matters. That's a more recent article, as well as probably the hardest thing is going to be the few pages from this book on the unconscious, and that's already on Leia. And you will write reading response number 2. So, is there any questions about that part?
No. Can you share the slides?
Sorry, I can't hear you very well, Arlette. I'm not sure if it's your
Can
mic.
you share the slides?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm going to be putting the slides up on Leia as well, of course.
Miss, are you gonna send out like an email or like, I don't know, put it on something what to do?
So it is under the, I realized that I made a mistake and I didn't attach it last time, but it is attached under assignments in the instructions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I was going to.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Just to confirm, like it's pretty much exactly what we did last paper, just for like another text.
Exactly.
So like it could be like the 2 paragraphs and
yeah,
perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to like refine working with this format, but we're going to focus on figuring things out about the individual texts. So I'm going to put the slides there for you so that you can go back and look at them. Yes, I will send you all the Mayo when your responses are marked. And I will look into the possibility of recording and what I would need to do for that. Okay, I'm going to stop the share. Okay, any other questions? No. Okay. You are free to go as you wish. Please have a good week.
You have a better week, Miss. Thank you.
Oh,
Bye, Miss.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you. Thanks, Crypto.
Bye, Miss.
Have a great week, Miss.